Hey guys, Kid Comics here, in front of the wall of comics, and today I'm going to be showing you why you should be a comic book collector. I'm here to show you how I got into comic books, and more importantly, how you can get into comic books. Before I begin, many of you may be wondering, who is Kid Comics? Well, I am a new and upcoming creator on YouTube that is a boxer, drummer, and most importantly, a comic collector. I'm here to make the comic book community just a bit better, starting with you guys, the viewers. To start off easy and help you understand more about comics, I would like to share a few examples of what got me into comic books. Now, the first time I ever picked up a comic book was from my dad's old collection, which he never fully got through sorting and determining what books were valuable and such, since he thought that these books could make him a good profit, which I'll talk about later. Now, the first book I ever picked up from my dad's comic book collection was a copy of Werewolf by Night number 32, the first appearance of Moon Knight. Now, first thing I noticed from this comic book was the awesome artwork it seems to hold. Nowadays, newer generations of kids never seem to really appreciate the awesome things that these comic books would hold, one of those being the awesome artwork that these would have. And this is mostly due to the fact that there are many other hobbies out there, such as like collecting Funko Pops or trading cards. When I would look through my dad's old collection, I would find things such as omnibuses, which are great to be able to read some of these comic books. Now, omnibuses are basically a bunch of comic books, usually from a series, packed together into one book so that you could read them all together without having to buy the individual comic books. Now, this leads us into our second and most important reason on how comic books were such great reads. Now, the first omnibus I would pick up was known as Kraven's Last Hunt, which was a series involving Spider-Man hunting down one of his many enemies, Kraven the Hunter, into what would be his last hunt, which I'm not going to spoil too much because I really want you guys to read this. Now, there are hundreds of great reads for any genre. Like, let's say you're into more like mystery type themes, then the DC comic book series The Watchmen would be a great read as it revolves around an anti-hero, Rorschach, who attempts to investigate the murder of a superhero known as the Comedian. There are endless amounts of great reads for any genre that piques your interest. Let's say you like a specific character, like Batman. I would recommend the Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns series, which involves Batman coming out of retirement to beat up some evil mutants. In this hobby, there really is something for everyone. Now, if you couldn't afford these omnibuses or comic books, many local libraries happen to contain them. A lot of books, especially ones from an early age, happen to be very expensive. Luckily, there just happens to be a ton of reprints of these books made by the same comic book companies. Whether it be a book from the 1960s or 1940s even, these comic books were able to be replicated by many other, comic book companies like Marvel or DC. So if you really wanted to have a Superman #1, I guess you could just buy it as a reprint. Now, if you really wanted to obtain the original copies, get ready to spend a lot of money. But you would either have to buy it graded or raw. Now, you must be asking yourself, Kid Comics, what do you mean by having a book graded? Well, many comic books, especially those spanning from the 1940s to 2000s, were graded based on how much the value they were worth and if they were a key comic book. Now, what a key comic book is a comic book that has some sort of significance to the story, whether it be a first appearance of a character or even like an origin of a character. Now, a first appearance of a character would be like Werewolf by Night number 32, which I showed you. Now, this was the first ever appearance that this character ever showed up in a comic book and pretty much anywhere else in the world. And there are also many other sort of significances like in key comic books, like second appearances and origins and first cameo appearances. Now, an origin would basically be the character's origin story, like what happened to them or how they got their powers. And that would usually be in their first appearance, but sometimes it can be in separate issues. Now, second appearance is pretty explanatory, where it is the second appearance of the character in a comic book, which is usually the issue after their debut in the first appearance. Their first cameo appearance is very difficult to sort out, especially with certain books, such as like Amazing Spider-Man 50 or Incredible Hulk 180 or 181. And basically what that is pretty much sort of like a panel or like a sliver of this character being mentioned in the issue before their first full appearance. Now, the reason I say it's so controversial is because sometimes people might think that certain parts of a book that they consider a cameo appearance could technically be a first full appearance, like Incredible Hulk 180, where it's a panel right before showing Wolverine, like his full costume and stuff. But some people like to say that that is the first full appearance of Wolverine. Now, the third and most controversial reason why you should be a comic book collector is the value of comic books. All of us want to fund our hobbies, and comic book collecting is pretty much a self-funding hobby. Many collectors, even me, have been able to save up for the books we want by selling comic books. One of those being Amazing Spider-Man number 41, the first ever appearance of Rhino. Now, these comic books can also be pretty good investments to have. And if you know anything about investments, they pretty much rely on supply and demand. So this usually depends on the book and the comic book market. Some books, like Action Comics number 1, the first appearance of Superman, could be in a much lower supply since that book came around in the 1940s, and kids back then really didn't think that Superman was going to be valuable, so they basically just threw away their comic books. This book could also be pretty highly demanded due to a low print run that it had, making the book a lot more valuable. The demand towards a comic book depends on the issue and title of a book. So let's say like Incredible Hulk right now is a lot more popular since a movie came out, then that book is going to be much more valuable. And it usually depends on the issue number since it could be a key comic book. A lot of the key comics are in high demand since they could represent a character's first appearance or even origin. These key books could be demanded also due to a movie or a show featuring them, you know, like Daredevil number 1 being the first appearance of Daredevil, and how the Daredevil Born Again series is coming out pretty soon, or I think it did come out. I haven't watched that yet. And just some of these books could also just be in demand for the cool covers they have. My last and final reason on why you should get into comic books is a huge amount of creators out there. When I first got into this hobby, many creators helped me learn so much more about it, just working extremely hard to make their viewers have fun with the comic book hobby as well. It's always fun watching your favorite creator go on a rant or even just go out in the wild hunting for some comic books. Just like every hobby, there will always be content creators out there just to make the hobby a bit better. I'd like to thank you guys for watching Kid Comics. Smash that like button if you like my first video and subscribe if you want to see more. And until next time, see ya.